Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little neurotic about my sleep. And we all know in order to feel our best, build muscle, lose body fat, sleep is a big part of it. When I started incorporating cured nightcaps as part of my wind down routine, it truly changed the game in terms of having a good night's quality sleep and waking up feeling refreshed. The thing that makes the nightcap stand out isn't the already properly dosed CBD to help with general aches, discomfort, and mood, but it's the added CBN that takes this product to the next level. CBN supports your body's natural sleep rhythms throughout the night for deep restorative sleep that leaves you feeling ready to take on anything the next day. No grogginess or harsh side effects. I like to take these nightcaps with me when I'm traveling or if I'm experiencing higher stress than normal. Pairing the nightcaps with either Zen or a few drops of one of their CBD oils really hits the spot. Making sure to check out all of Cured's amazing products online. Use the code, all one word, for a discount at checkout.
Like the funny part for me is like whenever I hear that, I'm like, ooh, remember like that dude that did the snake hat and those I'm a snake. It was on like Vines back in the day, which by the way, kids, just so you know, Vines were the original TikTok, so get bent TikTok. It's just the weird snake guy. That's all it is.
So Stephen is referring to the study that we're going to talk about today, had a part in it where they talked about snake eating patterns and compared it to humans. Now, which obviously there's a lot of differences there, but they found out there's not as many as maybe we think. So today we're going to talk about this study. Was it just 100 grams of protein? What are they? Oh no, that's what Stephen titled it.
Yeah, they compared a certain amount of
this guy.
We're gonna need a screenshot.
I don't remember
for the
that
thumbnel. He's showing us a picture.
Yeah, because they can that be the thumbnail? Yeah.
He's gonna be.
You guys aren't dorky enough. Come on.
So this study, okay, so here's the name. It's long. The anabolic response to protein ingestion during recovery from exercise has no upper limit in magnitude and duration in vivo in humans. Boom. So basically what it was is they took, they had placebo, they had 25 grams of protein and they had 100 grams of protein in drinks, which guys, that part is what melted my brain when I was reading this, when they started breaking down how they made the like marked protein, like shakes or whatever. And then something about like the cow, like the tracer cow or something. And I was like, what are we talking about now? So they had 100 grams, 25 grams, and then a placebo. And then they said like college aged resistance trained young men. And after a training session, had them take one of the drinks. And then they took multiple samples over a 12-hour period and then tried to figure out what they could figure out. That's the fun part about science, right? They said, this is what we know. 20 grams of protein seems to be everybody's jam. And within 4 hours, you want to have it. It's going to do everything. Don't have any extra. We're done there. And then they said, what if we do have extra? And what if we look at 12 hours instead of 4 hours? And they found some cool stuff. So
maybe cool stuff.
What do you mean?
I think that's exactly. I said what I mean.
Oh, okay.
I said it did what I mean it did.
So there was like
it's always maybe.
My brain went in a lot of different
science
as I read this one. And you know what it made me think about was when they talked. So in there, they talked about how the leucine and valine and isoleucine stayed up and like because of the dietary source of it.
Whoa. Back it up. Back it up. most people aren't even going to know what we're talking about with
I
that.
was just about to explain them. So I knew you were going to do that. You were going to tell me I was going too far. So they're going to be the amino acids that we have to get elsewhere, right? And so in terms of if you want to build muscle and you want recovery and things like that, like this is the concern with vegetarian or vegan diets, that sometimes getting all of the amino acids can be difficult. And we need those guys to do the job if we want to see like physique and performance and like those kind of things generally.
So I like to think of it like if you have your little Lego neighborhood, like leucine's like maybe your Lego firefighter. Like it's really important. You need him. Or maybe he's your Lego like police officer. And then like you have your Lego firefighters, maybe like isoleucine or valine or one of the other branch chains. So like if you don't have them, your Lego neighborhood is literally in chaos. It's not complete.
Right.
So you have to have all of your little Lego guys doing all their little Lego jobs to have a complete neighborhood.
It's really funny that you use that because that's how I describe amino acids is a Lego or Jenga tower. And that if you're not getting all of them in, you're not getting like the middle guys and like you already have a weaker tower. So I use the exact same stuff. So they talk about how you have to get those from dietary protein. And when they dosed people with the shakes that were fully formed or like had all of the amino acids present, that it wasn't like everybody got super toxic like they think the concern is and stuff like that, but that those 3 essential amino acids did hang out and stay elevated for the muscle protein synthesis and like things like that longer and longer. Now, this made me think about BCAAs and EAAs as a supplement because, they used to be like very popular. And then it was like, well, as long as you're getting enough protein, you don't necessarily need to supplement with those. But then reading this paper made me think, should people maybe continue to supplement with them if they're showing that dietary intake allows them to stay circulating throughout the blood and the oxidation is not necessarily increased?
And see, this is where I say maybe, because there's like, when we talk about all the other considerations in this study, because there's other studies out there that talk about protein intake and that talk about, what optimal or what the high end threshold is. And that's where, most of our data historically has come from in terms of our opinions of saying, okay, we probably don't need to worry about any more than this. As long as we hit this threshold, extra doesn't really benefit us. But multiple things to take into consideration. And so one of the big things in this study is that the workouts they had these people do, they were full body workouts, right? So that's important because we have other data that has been done prior in other studies that shows like single muscle groups or multi-muscle groups, but not full body with differences in proteins didn't have a difference in effect, right? And the ones that have shown that difference in effect, so whether that's statistically significant or not, which is what we typically actually call matters, the ones that have shown a positive effect on more protein have been with full body exercise. So I think it's important to like have that as a consideration. So maybe we're just doing full body 2 or 3 days a week and like, okay, now this starts to become a little bit more, I think, catered towards us versus the person doing the push-pull leg split like 6 days a week or the traditional bodybuilder split, because we don't have any data to say that this actually is going to matter or be more beneficial for those people.
Right. So
Also,
oh, no, Tyler, go. Yeah.
well, I was also going to just like the practicality of it too, right? Like, I don't know many people that could sit down and consume 100 grams of protein in one sitting. Like
I would.
like now it's like, yeah, like it's great, but like who could actually sit and plow through 100 grams of protein and chicken breast post workout?
Oh,
Not
but see, that's why they talked about different protein sources.
Yeah.
But like, I
Yeah,
got excited
too.
reading this because as somebody who fucking hates protein and like I dig shakes for it, like I read it and was like, okay, perfect. So I can, reasonably assume I could get away with that and it wouldn't be a bad thing. Where they said, what's funny to me is that with the study, we haven't told everybody what they found. So they had everyone have the 3 different shakes. And basically what they found is that if you do have the higher intake, the 100 grams of protein in one sitting after this full body training session, that things continued to stay elevated and that you continued to have a benefit from it and find like saturation and everything over the 12-hour period, all like in a linear fashion with the giant dose compared to the smaller dose, saying that if you were to do something like this, you're not losing out on the benefits past like 30 or 40 grams. You're continuing to get, I think they said like 85% goes towards muscle protein synthesis. We're losing roughly about, they said somewhere between like 6 to 15 in different situations to oxidation, which means your protein's just getting burnt up and like sent away. And so 85%, utilization rate is pretty legit. And so, being able to just maybe on big workout days, and like I thought about that too, where like, oh, so now would protein almost be like carbs, where you could have that be like variable or something, where you're looking across the week? Because doesn't Dr. Joe, was it Dr. Joe, where like someone talked about that, where like on the weekends, they don't focus on their protein intake and they just let it kind of fall off because they know during the week they're solid. So they kind of look at the weekly average too.
I'm not sure.
That was
Yeah, I don't remember. So, and then let me also say in the same breath, this is one study.
Right.
And so here is, because I'm sure a lot of you have been hearing about the 100 grams of protein thing or the very large protein things because it's super popular right now. Super popular.
Yeah.
That's my London accent for tonight.
Yeah.
Did I get it right this time?
No.
Damn it.
I was more like French than you and
Yeah.
British.
No. One study does not prove anything. What we are looking for is one study. It proves that we need more research in that.
Right.
It means that it needs to be replicated. It needs to continue to be done. So anytime one study comes out and it's super exciting, remember, like we can get weird outlier effects. We can get different appearances. And this is not me saying that this is bad information or it's not a cool study or it's not good, but it is definitely me saying that until further evidence produces itself, don't put all your eggs in the newly woven basket with new techniques that might not stick. So I do think it is important that people realize that.
No.
Yeah.
I think an important thing too with this study is milk, 80% casein, 20% whey. Casein is just more slowly digesting. And so that could potentially have an effect based off of different protein sources. Now, they did note some other research studies in here saying that maybe that doesn't make much of a difference when they did look at some other stuff. So maybe that isn't an issue, but I think it's also something to consider as well, just how digestive this type of protein is. Like that is going to make somewhat of a difference.
And just to be that fucking guy, because it is who I am, we do have other research that we pull the idea of the refractory period of protein theory from, where they IV'd amino acids into people, literally just shooting amino acids into the bloodstream nonstop. And what they saw was that muscle protein synthesis and muscle growth spiked up and then came back down and stopped.
Right.
And it was not reinitiated until the amino acid levels in the blood came back down to baseline and then were respiked again.
So question with that, because I liked, which if anyone is listening and wants to read this, I mean, I can put it in the YouTube like notes.
It's open source. You can go to PubMed and get them, both those two, this study we're talking about and that other one that I just mentioned.
It's a good one to read. Like you have to get through a lot of sciencey jargon, but there's some stuff that I thought was like really good just for people in general, like if they wanted to sit down and read it, that just does like good teaching about how stuff works. And so with that, with the IVing in things, so in here they talked about how with the full body workout, that might have contributed to this working well because more of the body was like, hey, I need protein. So like basically once the amino acids and the protein get released into your bloodstream, it's not like, I mean, they flow around and just look for somewhere to be helpful. And so, if you have a full body workout where more of the body is crying out saying, hey, I need repair, then we're going to have, everything get taken up and stuff like that. So maybe with like the smaller workouts or like things like that, you're not going to see as much uptake and you end up with more waste because there's not as much of like an acute need in the short term. I don't know. I haven't read like a full like research study in a while. So I was like, this is amazing.
Well, like I'd also be
Welcome back.
curious to like, what about pre-workout nutrition status, right?
Did they talk about
Like, would that have an effect? I don't think they did. I kind of quick went back and quick kind of looked, but like, I think, yeah, there would be other things to consider. I'd also like to see a follow-up on when they do a comparison with carbohydrates and the protein, because we also know when we ingest carbohydrates and protein together, there is a better uptake. And so like, I think it kind of continues to put puzzle pieces into the overall puzzle, but it still also, I think, leaves kind of some questions of like, okay, where is this going to actually be optimized and practical for people?
who it makes me think of is intermittent fasters, who enjoy that. And they kind of bring that up towards the end, that this shows that, you can get away with intermittent fasting in like a smaller window, as long as you're getting in enough and you can maintain muscle. And so, it's nice for people who enjoy doing that or who fall kind of into that pattern. Like I accidentally intermittently fast because I just stop eating like 4 o'clock in the afternoon because then shit gets busy with kids and practice and stuff. So like I eat super early. And so, there's a lot in here that I think is exciting and that is like, okay, well, people act like when it comes to those windows, like if you don't have your like anabolic protein shake in the window and stuff like that, everything was a waste of time. Like your body just goes poof, you missed the time limit, you don't get muscles anymore. And like it's much more forgiving and like better at meeting your needs than people like to make it out to be, I feel like.
Well, I mean, so I think the scientific community has kind of negated that idea of the anabolic window response anyways. So we do have studies that, talk about the refractory period. We do have this study that talks about, how we'll say the larger dose protein might be beneficial. And I'm in agreement. So for me, I think this is a win for intermittent fasters, for people who do time restricted feeding, who maybe are only going to do 1 or 2 meals a day, but it's going to be a large meal and that's going to be their go-to. Because traditionally, and I'm still of the mindset that like, I don't know that intermittent fasting is as beneficial for building and keeping muscle. Same with like a ketogenic diet, even though yes, it's muscle sparing, as a traditional diet of, 3 or 4 meals a day, just food spread out evenly and having the opportunity to trigger muscle growth nutritionally through protein and having carbohydrates that are muscle sparing throughout the day. However, it most certainly gives those dietary approaches more argument with this study for why they might not be as bad of an idea or why it might not matter as much. And I think that is empowering. That is what I think is cool because it's saying, all right, hey, maybe you want to do that. Maybe you're the person and you want to have 2,500 calories within a 4-hour window. And that's your deal because you feel great on that and it works for you. Cool. We have more argument to say, well, if you want to do that and make the most out of your physique, now we have more substance to actually say, like, look, here's a proof that that might not be so bad.
Right.
Whereas prior to that, all of our evidence would suggest that we would be, I don't like using the word optimal because if it exists, we don't know what it is, but it would be less optimal than doing a traditional dietary approach.
Right.
It's another tool in your toolbox, and I think allows, just for so much more relaxation around nutrition and life and context and just being able to adapt so much to what's going to work best for you and it still allow you to achieve those results. It just opens up that window for so many more people to achieve something, right? Whatever that goal might be. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So, it goes back to trying to make this where like it's not that serious to have everything done perfectly, but that you want to do it relatively well consistently. And that it can all be made to work for like almost anyone's lifestyle. We just still have to figure out the best way to do it. And so in these situations, it's nice because I've talked to people who would say like that they didn't bother with like extra protein or something like that because they thought it was going to go to waste, or it was going to be stored as body fat, or that they, you know, they don't have the extra amount even if they're hungry because of like these concerns and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, maybe if you're having, like I've said before, there's that ridiculous icon meal that has 90 grams of protein in one tray of food. And even though I don't generally eat it all at once, it takes me a while. Like I have days where I get this like huge bolus in this one meal, and like, that's okay. I'm not like wasting time or like whatever. And there's people out there who love to try and make things sound so scary if you don't do it the way that whatever current research or fad, like research fad that happens to make it onto social media or whatever.
I would say more fad. Like the research is the research. Like
Right.
as much as you would like to argue the data, like, and by all means, the scientific community does. We destroy each other on every little aspect of these things. And that's why they have to go through peer review before they get published in any journals and become available for everybody to read. But like, there's no arguing the data. Now, there can be arguments for like how different people respond, for being an outlier, for all that kind of stuff. The data is the data. So I can't argue with this study. I wasn't here. I wasn't there doing it. I can say these are the other considerations. This is why I feel this way about this study. But that's the data. It is what it is. And I know we're in this time where people like to think that they can argue the data and argue their truths on everything, but the data is the data. It says what it says.
I dig it.
Yeah.
I like data.
Yeah. Me too.
All right, gentlemen, we're either about to have the fastest podcast in history.
Yeah, I mean,
some extrapolations, friends.
I think the extrapolation practicality point is like aim to get anywhere between 20 and 100 grams post-workout. Like go with what you're comfortable with, go with what digests well. Try not to like stress so much about it, and like know that you're covered, you know, within that range. And they even suggested maybe even more is going to be fine, right? So yeah, I think like that's the biggest thing is like, yeah, just get something in and you're going to be good to go, and adjust based off of what works best for you and allows you to be the most consistent.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I mean, you just continue to hit your number, right? Like this doesn't change what your daily protein intake should be. They're just saying what you can just, you know, get away with kind of in like one sitting. Is it beneficial? And so you still should be hitting your protein target routinely. And then stuff like this just says that if you have like an oh shit day, it's okay to drink 100-gram protein shake before bed. Like,
Oh, my tummy.
So you guys want to know the funniest part for me of this? Everybody talks about study funding, right? And I doubt anybody even looked at this. So if you look at the end of the study,
who was this one?
it was by
Gary.
Friesland Campina. Okay. So if you don't know who that is, it's very easy to Google it and say Friesland Campina is a cooperative of dairy farmers that produces and sells various brands of milk products worldwide. Now,
big surprise.
Big surprise, right? And this is not me saying that data is not the data.
Yeah,
okay?
It doesn't change it, right? It's just who
It's not me
paid for
saying
it.
Because the people that are going to pay for these studies to be done are the people who are going to probably benefit or be able to change what they're doing based on their marketing and their formulations, yada, yada, whatever, so that like they can benefit from it. It is very, very common to see that studies on supplements are paid for by supplement industries. They're the sponsors of who are doing that. Because who else is going to pay for that? The government just doesn't put up money to do that stuff.
Yeah.
But when I see stuff like that and they're like, yeah, could have done even more. Like, yeah, fuck it. Of course you could have. Of course you could have done more.
You could just keep drinking 100 grams of protein from milk from our dairies once an hour, every hour.
And so the funny part is it like makes me think of when I was younger and we had a guy who was the state sheriff for the strongman for Florida down the street. And he's like, yeah, if you want to put on weight, just drink a gallon of whole milk every day with in addition to your meals. And I was like,
Yeah.
bleh.
The only place I like my milk is either in my cereal or with chocolate cake and brownies. That's the only time I will have cereal or milk.
Right. So when we get back into how scientists absolutely rail, just take into consideration, like this is part of it. Like when I read a study, I am not sitting there being like, okay, cool, let's see what new valuable information I can glean from this. It's like, okay, let's see what this says, and then let's see all the specifics to see if they line up for what people actually do. Because drinking 100 grams of protein for most people out there is obnoxious. You're not going to do it. It's going to be probably pretty damn expensive. Um, it's just not going to be super realistic. And again, back to the caveat, full body workout only. So like when you look at the like what all the studies say and how we haven't seen this in any of the studies where people do specific body parts. So anybody who's training for a physique athlete or who's doing this like this, that, or the other thing where they're training upper body or they're training back and biceps one day or they're doing whatever splits, you're out. The
Even with
study
lower
doesn't affect
body,
you.
is it that same way if it's lower body?
I mean, this was full body. So even with lower body, hey, right now this study doesn't affect you. Now I'm always open to saying my opinion can change. Show me one that people just do lower body and we have the same results. Great. Now I'm like, okay, maybe I should be pushing people for larger protein meals. But it's
Yeah.
not even just like the actuality of it, but like your digestion.
Yeah.
So like trying to digest 100 grams of protein at a time. Now, whether that's protein shakes and like milk, whey, casein protein. And again, most people are going to do a whey blend. So it's not really going to be the casein protein. That's probably what they're giving you.
Yeah.
And we already know that those have different release and absorption and digestion rates in terms of how they process and your body processes it. So again, like the more you get into this, the more you're like, okay, this starts becoming very specific for the people that it's probably going to actually apply to.
Yep.
I agree.
And I feel like for especially for people who are going to listen to podcasts like ours, where you obviously have an interest in like these kinds of things and getting more information and understanding about them, things like mass, I forget what it stands for.
Monthly application of sports science.
There we go. Because then if I go to their website, the first thing it says is making application of science simple. So then I was like, did they change what mass stands for? Because that also spells mass. And so
Maybe they did.
It's a research review. And what's nice is they make it like very digestible, where they kind of cut out I didn't find what the crazy word was in that one study where I like never
The
would have been able
jargon.
to say it out loud because it was just too many syllables. So these ones like help, they take different stuff. It's usually like a handful of studies, right? Like per thing.
And different topics, yeah.
Right. And I highly recommend stuff like that because like Steven said, you can go with any study and be like, okay, well, who paid for it? Which doesn't change what the answer is. They can't go change the data. They're just putting up the cash for everything and they can't necessarily affect like the peer review process and stuff. Like they don't get a choice in that. So it doesn't change the data, but it is interesting to see because you could probably find, Diet Coke saying that aspartame is perfectly fine, like funding those studies because it helps them to see that stuff. But then what I love about research, what they have to do is they put their own like limitation, like here's what we didn't tell you, like towards the end with stuff or say like, this is what we could have found out a little bit more. And you see how very specific the situations are that they're testing with stuff. And generally when you're listening to something or learning about a research study in conversation, it's as simple as being like, oh, hey, did you hear there's that 100-gram protein study where they just said that's all you need? And then it's as simple as that. And it's like, but that wasn't it was a little bit more nuanced than what that was. And so if you're somebody who has an interest in these things, then looking into this stuff and looking for the ones that are just open source or getting something like a research review, you don't have to do it forever. But I think starting to read those kinds of things, and like that was my favorite part of getting my master's degree, was doing that routinely, and then learning how to read between the lines, learning how, like, how does this really build out and stuff like that? Do I need to be stressed out about this? And like those kinds of things can be really important, because a lot of people hear stuff with research and they can make it, you know, social media, the news, like whatever. Have you seen this new oat Zempic? Oh my God, I'm dying with this. Where like literally 10 days ago, they were talking about how oats were like going to kill you, like they're poison or something. And if you have oats, they produce nutrients that are like terrible for you. Now, oats,
Get bent.
now there's oat Zempic, and they're like, oh, you want the benefits of Ozempic and you can't afford it? Make a bowl of oats for breakfast. It's great for you. And I'm like, you have to be kidding me. This like whiplash turnaround of how this goes. It's crazy town.
Well, yeah, you see it like just kind of go around and around, right? Like year after year, where it's like one decade like fats are bad for you, the other decade carbs. Like it kind of just continues on, and time is a flat circle.
Yeah. Yeah, like mustaches are back. All right, what's up, 70s and 80s? Welcome back, y'all.
I'm gonna keep going with the full beard.
The beard and the mustache are very different. It's a very different vibe.
Very different.
But like, so that's, I think the problem is that we want these overarching answers, like yes or no, like plain and simple, yes or no. Do this, just do that, just do this, just do that. And the problem is that like our bodies are not quite that simple, and there's a lot of differences from human to human. And so cool, yeah. It's, and again, I think there's plenty of good things from this study. Like, yeah, great. There are good arguments here, but we just have to keep those things in mind, because would it be the same if they did eat 100 grams of protein from chicken? Not 100 grams of chicken, 100 grams of protein worth of chicken, right? So that's like what, 20 grams for 4 ounces uncooked. So that's 4, 8, 16. So that's 20 ounces of chicken uncooked. One sitting. Post workout. Ooh, would it be the same? Would it be the same with whey protein? I would say probably not, because whey protein is much quicker digested. So again, it's like, all right, well, do you want to try this? Cool. Do you feel good on it? Cool. Like, let's be open to trying maybe some different things if you really want to, and if you feel like it's going to benefit you. And I think this is what that does, is it gives us a little bit more argument for accepting some things, or maybe being supportive of some things that maybe we wouldn't have been as supportive of. But also keeping in mind that research is extremely nuanced, right? Would it be the same if you were 55? If they had all 55-year-old men and women, or in this study,
untrained versus trained, like
right.
Yeah.
Right. Would there be the same results? And we just don't know yet. So taking this study and over extrapolating too much out of it and pulling and making this into, which is obviously what's happening, because what gets people excited? It's the sexy thing. It's a new thing. Do this one thing and you'll build muscle fast. And it's like, what? Like, I would love to know that, because I've been trying to do it for a long time.
There's only one thing, and that's steroids.
But even then, not nearly as fast as people think.
No.
So it's like, be open to new ideas and doing things differently, but also understand that like there are physiological processes in the body that we understand, I would say, well enough. I'm hesitant to say fairly well, because like just the mechanisms of muscle growth and what we thought 5-10 years ago, different today, right? So like know enough so that when you sniff, you're like, oh, that smells like doo-doo, right? let me look, let me take a closer look. And then other things be like, ooh, that kind of smells like roses. You know, smells like ooh, ooh, ooh. Who was the Outcast?
Yes. Yes. I could like see the video with like where you're going.
Hey,
Yeah.
Guys, good job.
So like that's what the education piece is for. It's not to give you the answer. It's to give you enough information so that you can smell shit when it's shit.
Yeah.
And if something smells like, that seems like it would be pretty reasonable based on like what I know. Okay, now we can look a little bit more in depth. Now maybe we try it out.
Yeah.
Now maybe we're willing to give it the good old 1-2.
We need a more discerning palate with the information that we take in and what to do with it.
I sense hints of earthiness. Grapefruit.
Hints of a specific cow. If you read this thing, the cow thing really threw me off. I didn't understand why we had to talk about specific cows. Because did they get like specific high protein cows? Like what was that all about? I dig it. I'm excited about stuff like this because, you know, the funny part is it just says, if you want muscles, you need protein. More protein, sometimes better. And like, word that goes along with a lot of the things that we've learned is that you can't use that as your excuse for why you're not getting your protein intake in. You could have a double scoop shake. And I mean, I read it and I was like, Christina, stop being a bitch and get your protein in because it's no fun.
It's the only one that's adaptive, right? Like protein is the only macronutrient that we eat and our body's like, oh, cool, protein. Let me build muscle.
Right.
Right. Carbohydrates, it's like we eat carbs and it's like, cool, I can break down less muscle. Fats, it does something different. Protein's the only one that has that like really active effect of, cool, we're going to rebuild and build new muscle. So, I mean, like, for me, and then obviously everybody knows, like, what does this do for you guys in terms of how it changes maybe your protocols, maybe what you would advise people to do? Does it change anything? Does it not change anything? Like, how does your opinion on protein intake, timing, any of that stuff change, if at all, after reading this? Like, I think that's the real question that most people have.
Does it change anything for you?
Oh, I'm going to go last.
Oh, I mean, for me, like with my clients, when it comes to protein, I'm always very upfront about the fact that like, I am not the person who's going over on her intake routinely. And so like, I can relate a lot with my clients who have like trouble getting it in, but I do have, I mean, a decent amount of clients who are eating like 30 grams over like body weight because they're just like, I like it. And they just love protein. And so I'm like, whatever, man, if that's your jam, you have at it. And then I always tell my clients, like, if you are experiencing like hunger with stuff or you go over on your macros, like start with a protein shake. I will never be grumpy if you went over on your protein target for the week. Like it's never one I'm going to be like, we need to get that down. And so it just like kind of reaffirms that I'm not going to stress with protein. I've never been concerned about people's kidneys because I've never coached somebody who like needed dialysis and should worry about protein. And so
side note, plenty of research done on protein intakes and how they affect the kidneys, and zero bad effects have ever been shown in any of the research based on that.
Right. Unless you're like hooked up to dialysis and have a whole host of other concerns than like your muscle development right now. And so like that should not be a concern, super high protein or like whatever. But I still hear that one from people. And like they'll say their doctor told them. And I'm like, whoa, why are we still talking about this? So yeah, I mean, honestly, what this tells me on days where I'm super, super busy, I used to make like just a giant protein shake and then I would just pound it to get it done. And like, I'll probably do that more often to get my full protein in because I'm not afraid of like, I'm not going to increase my calories over the day. I'm just going to make sure I get all of my protein in. And sometimes it might be in a really large bolus. And there's that.
Yeah. Doesn't change my opinion. Like it's get enough protein in the day. If you have to have a bigger amount at certain point, that's fine. Like I think it maybe gives us kind of like we've talked about another little tool in our toolbox that maybe we can be a little bit more confident on. But yeah, beyond that, no real changes. It's not like this changes our whole concept of protein in the body.
Right.
And I would say it's the same for me. I don't think it really changes much of anything for me. I'm still looking for people to get a pretty bolus dose of protein as many times a day as I can, with having probably at least 3 hours in between those. And then like we've also seen that less protein is probably fine. So for those people that are maybe getting like 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight or lean body mass, whatever, you're going to be fine. So we've just seen that there's this big differential of what's acceptable. And so I don't, because I've done the 400 grams of protein a day.
What?
Oh
Why?
yeah.
Why?
When I first met Paul, I had a coach that I had paid out of pocket, and I was broke as shit. So I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna do whatever they say because I paid them. Uh, and it wasn't anything crazy, but they had me on 400 grams of protein a day, and I was like, yo, this sucks. And it was expensive. It was so expensive. Because like animal proteins aren't cheap, neither is supplementary protein. Like all that stuff's expensive. It's like that was a problem there for me, and my digestion wasn't the greatest. We'll be honest. So like my thing is, I'm going to continue to say, hey, these are the general principles that we want to keep in mind. We want to have enough protein in a sitting. So if we're going to eat protein and say this is a protein meal, we want to hit at least a bottom end threshold to make sure that we have enough so it's telling the body to make more strongy strongs, right? That's a scientific term, right? It's the jargon.
Yes, it's in the literature.
And again, I'm still aware of the refractory period of protein theory. And I like that because not only is it saying, okay, yes, there's some science to support that, but also in terms of just trying to down more protein one after another, I think that's difficult for most people. I have a lot of people struggle with the hunger signaling to eat enough oftentimes. So trying to just down protein back to back, I think is difficult. So, and it's simpler. It's simpler. Hey, have breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
And you're good. Have a good amount of protein, 150 grams, 130 grams if maybe you're, a female. If you're a guy, maybe it's somewhere between 150 to 180 for most guys. If you're having at least that much in 3 meals, and you just spread it out evenly, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. You don't, most people are not going to ever be at the point where the amount of minuscule like nitpicking is actually going to make any significant difference for them, other than them being so stressed out about it that it makes a negative impact.
Right.
So now I will say this. I am much more open after seeing this to the idea of people doing intermittent fasting.
Right.
So that has changed. It's not going to be my go-to recommendation, but I have less argument against it at this point. And I'm like, okay.
Where would you have them? Say somebody had a really tight window. Maybe
2
they're
hours.
like a one meal person. Okay. No, wait, back that up. Let's say they have like a 6-hour eating window. Okay. And then they're spending the other 18 hours not they were going to do this is like a crazy question. If they were going to do the 100-gram protein shake, like one big dose of protein, where would you have them put it?
For a 6-hour window.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have them do one. I'd have them do two.
Break.
I have them do one at the beginning of the window,
Mm-hmm.
and then one towards the end of the window.
Right, to stretch it out while they're fasting, because this would show that it would continue to break down over the course of 12 hours. Ideally, they'd be continuing to soak up the benefits.
And at that beginning of the window, I'd say you probably don't need to do 100 grams. You probably don't need to do casing. You can probably get away with something that's going to be more faster digesting, like whey protein or whey protein isolate. That way, you see things come up, back down. You have enough time to account for the refractory period, this idea that you can't just keep it going on that. And then you can do like your longer digesting, slower, whatever, 100-gram, according to the study, towards the end of that, so that while you're fasting, we should hopefully, if this study holds true for everybody else, get the benefit of that. But again, based on the study, that would only be on days they do full body workouts prior.
Right. Yes. But this would, if I had somebody who wanted to do a window like that, I would probably I mean, I do this anyways, like try to get them to have as much protein as possible towards the end, but this would reaffirm that I'd be like, okay, let's make sure we get like a hefty dose so that this is continuing on as long as we can, because that's generally the concern with like intermittent fasting. I mean, I haven't been as concerned that like, oh, we have extra breakdown and like blah, blah, blah. My thing is energy, like for the most part, right? Like, how are you going to get through your lift if you're stopping eating at like noon, but you lift at 5 o'clock in the morning? You're going to feel like shit by the time that rolls around, you know, or like we're not going to do our very best for it. But I mean, like we've said with a lot of stuff, if that's your jam and it works for you.
Maybe because the research is pretty split on whether or not the pre-workout meal actually matters also for like carbs and stuff.
But usually you want to have something at least like within a decent window beforehand.
The research is split. It is
Right.
not all in agreement.
But are you saying they don't find benefit in either an immediate pre-workout or like 8 hours prior?
There have been plenty of research studies that have shown that the pre-workout meal doesn't matter, that performance was just as good with or without. Now, what I will say is I think that is individually dependent. And so if you feel like you do better with a pre-workout meal and carbs pre-workout, I would absolutely prioritize that and make that like something that we're definitely trying to do.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel like it matters, who cares? Split them up however the hell you want.
I'd be curious, sport dependent wise too, like what sports they look at with like different stuff, because different ones would have different.
Oh, I'm just talking about, I don't talk about that marathon stuff. I'm just talking about the gym stuff.
But a lot of times with this research, a lot of times it's cardio focused because that's the easier ones for them to replicate. Like, I mean, we're seeing more with like weight training and things like that now. But I know when I was going through grad school, like it was pretty rare to see stuff come up that was weight training focused, and it was mostly cardio based just because it's easier.
And if it was weight training focused, it was all men only. There were no studies in women back in the day.
100%.
And that would make more sense that like if it's cardiovascular based, the carbohydrates would make a difference because you're going to be digesting them and getting more carbs there. But, you know, if your resistance training is that influx of carbs during that workout that doesn't completely deplete glycogen anyways,
right?
Does it actually matter?
Yeah.
So that would be the bigger question, is if you're actually depleted with glycogen or not when you're going into that workout, then maybe those meals matter. Or if it's sodium and hydration and electrolytes. There's a lot of other things. I'm the worst. I'm sorry, y'all.
No, but it's funny because this is where your head has to go with like a lot of this stuff, because we could chase ourselves in circles saying like, well, everything says that you should have this and you should have that and blah, blah, blah. Then you can also find things that say, doesn't really matter. And I mean, like, shit, people get jacked in prison, right? When like just doing what they can in prison and eating prison food. Let
me stop you right there. We are not endorsing that you do anything or make any choices that are going to facilitate you going to prison, folks. Please just follow all laws.
Yeah, don't go there to get jacked.
Who was that bodybuilder in the early 2000s? He was in prison, and I remember he let a video, and this was a prison workout, and it was like with a towel. Yeah. And like he's like, this is what we would do in prison.
That was CT Fletcher, my friend.
Yeah.
No, it was a different one. It wasn't CT Fletcher. It was someone else. I can't remember his name right now. But anyway,
CT Fletcher used to talk about that shit all the time.
Right.
He used to talk about Big Macs and bench press world records. And then he had a heart attack.
Truth.
A couple heart attacks.
So if you made it through all the science bullshit, welcome to the entertaining part.
Thanks for hanging out. Yeah. Well, I'm excited, and I kind of want to do things like these more often, where maybe we find stuff that, you know, could change the way people look at things, and then dive into it a little bit, give our opinions there. So if you guys find ones, shoot it our way.
It was Khalil Muscle. I think that's who it was.
Oh, yeah, him too. But so I think here's the other caveat. Like, even though, yes, we get into the details, even though, yes, we get into the more complex pieces of building muscle and how do you make progress with your physique, the truth of the matter is there are a lot of really simplistic things you can do. And I think because I like talking about this stuff, but at the same point, I do not want you guys and girls out there to get lost in the details either, to miss the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
the biggest thing is, hey, if we're making acceptable progress with what we're doing, okay, let's just keep doing what we're doing. We don't have to overcomplicate it. If you're having issues and you're struggling and you're trying to find the fix for you, and maybe this is it, then that's where this really shines. That's when this is beautiful. But I don't think any of us are saying, hey, you need to go out and have 100 grams of protein shakes, and everybody should be doing that all the time now. Like, none of us are there yet. Hey, I'm open to getting there one day if that's really what makes the most sense, and that's what it says. But we're not quite there yet, and things, they just have to be realistic for you.
100%.
Correct.
Tyler, I'm very glad that you have that handsome beard.
Thank you.
I don't know why. I just am. It's warm in my heart.
I will keep it. I'll keep it going just for you.
I appreciate it. My uncle has a pretty solid, like, Grizzly Adams beard, and it has like the salt and pepper with the silver, like the gray hairs in it.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody else gives him a hard time about it. And I think he feels like I'm being obnoxious and sarcastic every time. I'm like, you're looking pretty handsome, Mr. Guy. You know, I wish you would just realize
You just want him to know it's
the truth.
Being
Yeah.
genuine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a genuine compliment.
Vic always gets shit from like his parents and stuff for it, like the big beard. But like, I dig a beard. I think beards are nice.
Yeah.
Good job, Tyler.
Thank you. It needs a little cleanup, but it's still going well.
Steven, when you had your facial hair, I'm always team facial hair. Whenever everyone gets like froggy about it in November, and I'm like, yes, yeah, guys, I approve.
You liked the beard, not the mustache, though. The obnoxious handlebar mustache.
You can rock it. Like not everybody can pull off.
I don't think I could rock a mustache. I don't think.
He asked me about the Van Dyke. He was like, should I do that? And I was like,
maybe some mutton chops.
Like, on some people it'll work, but like, I don't know.
See here.
All right, so what are we gonna call this one now? 100 grams of protein and sick beards.
Be like a snake. Eat lots of protein.
Grizzly.
Which, by the way,
snake
we never
beads.
really said why that was relevant at all. Like, we just talked about the snake thing, made the comments, I showed the guy, and then we fucking left it.
So nobody's here anymore. They've all left us. But the snake point was that they were like, snakes do it. They eat like 25% of their body weight, and then they digest for like a week. And I mean, that was the whole.
It was just so random, right? I was gonna find it here.
They just had to drop it in there.
Because our digestive systems are the same as a snake's.
Right?
Yeah.
We can unhinge our jaw and then go out and eat.
Yeah.
A
Yeah, though this
toddler.
makes sense based on typical dietary intake patterns in humans, talking about like consuming 20 to 25. It's at odds with animal species in nature. This is most noticeable in snakes, in which the ingestion of a large meal, more than 25% of body mass, results in prolonged protein digestion, amino acid absorption, and elevated protein synthesis. Like, it's like, okay.
And then you have to be like, I'm not a snake.
Yeah, but
Could
maybe
you
there's
imagine?
some genetics there, but like we've evolved past that, I believe.
So imagine if, like, you as a human could unhinge your jaw, eat like a baby deer, and then just, because you'd have to just sit around. You couldn't really move with a baby deer within you digesting.
Right here.
Right? Or even in your torso, right? Because you'd just be so swollen, and then you'd have to just kind of sit around and be lazy while that happened for the most part,
Right.
until it was time to go eat again. It's just not.
I mean, that just sounds like me after every meal, anyways.
Poor Bambi.
I'm gonna need a video of the hinged jaw.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
but
so-
it is always, again, that's one of those other things where people take things out of context and they're like, yeah, this makes so much sense. You're like, fucking does it though?
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah. I just.
Like, there, yeah, okay. I was gonna say,
Anyways,
we're gonna
should
continue
probably-
traveling
yeah.
down this.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
anybody who wanted to
you're a
leave
rock
left already.
star.
The people that are still here are the ones that want
I
this.
like
These
Megan.
are our diehards.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like my client Megan is here. What's up, Megan? I feel like she
Sam's
hangs out.
definitely here too.
Okay, bye guys. I'm gonna stop the recording now.